As we were about to celebrate our 4th wedding anniversary, I sensed a subtle shift in our relationship. The mounting pressure from Ella's new job as a project manager exacerbated her OCD, and the time we spent together dwindled. The real blow. Discovering Ella's betrayal in an affair with her coworker, Derek. Welcome to the Love and Betrayed Love channel. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe and give it a thumbs up. My connection with Ella required a spark. Our 4th wedding anniversary approaching, we noticed a shift in our relationship, which was likely caused by Ella's new work as a project manager, which required her to take on greater responsibilities while her employer recovered from a heart attack. As the tension rose, Ella's generally well-controlled OCD worsened, she worked more and more, and we spent less and less time together. At first, Ella appreciated the modest gestures I made to help her relax, such as to massage her feet, cleaning the house and doing the laundry. But approximately 6 weeks following the promotion, everything appeared to lose its meaning. My attempts to console and assist her were received with scorn, and I felt like an outsider in my own home, desperate for guidance. I turned to long-married friends, including Mark Friend. "I cannot believe what you are telling me. It's normal for couples to face issues, but you and Ella have only been married for 4 years. Are you certain you didn't dream it?" Mark was astonished when I told him about some of the harsh things Ella had lately said. He went from astonishment to outright shock and stood by me as a friend. "Maybe she dropped you. I don't understand how or when this might have happened. She spends a significant amount of time in the office monitoring the transition to a new platform and is accountable for the project. This initiative is altering the trajectory of her career. Ella is too determined and single-minded to miss it by going to a romantic retreat. It appears that it is my friend. Your wife is entirely engrossed in her career, and you were simply a victim of her goals. I've been thinking about it, but something doesn't seem right in this situation." Mark answered carefully, staring at the remains of his beer. Knowing him so well, I could practically hear the internal debate waging in his mind: have another drink or return home to your wife and children. As he made his selection, a tiny smile appeared on his face and he signaled the bartender to pay the tab. Mark's affection for his family was evident. After settling the bill, he said his goodbyes to me. "Alex, don't hurry to blame Ella for anything, especially because she's working relentlessly under immense pressure to finish this job. Unsupportive spouses are terrible. Don't be that type of spouse," Mark said. The man seated next to me appeared to respond to Mark's comment. I tried to hear his words. "An unsupportive spouse is unpleasant, but an unfaithful spouse is even worse," he claims. I opted to trust, but also to verify. Ella was stuck in the office the next Saturday, putting new equipment together. I called her in the afternoon and offered to deliver pizza for lunch. Ella gratefully accepted my offer, but requested that I deliver 3 large pizzas because there were 4 hungry people in the office. I accepted their orders and headed to Ella's office to deliver the pizza. When I arrived, Ella introduced me to Sophia, whom I had met at the previous holiday party, as well as 2 new guys, Derek and Eric, who had recently been recruited. When the 5 of us were eating pizza, the environment was easygoing, with the exception of Derek, who appeared to be more controlled, as is characteristic with techies. So I didn't pay much attention to it, even if I didn't show it. I wanted to know how Ella spent her time away from home. She was clearly committed to the project, staying late at work and refusing to leave. After 3 weeks, I found myself at home. I looked forward to Ella's comeback. There was no evidence of misbehavior on her part, but our emotional and physical connection had yet to be repaired. I decided to take a fresh strategy and change tactics. The aroma of food emanated from the stove. The bottle of Mero was uncorked. The table was beautifully arranged with flickering candles and invasive flowers. It is exactly 5:30. Ella entered the room, her eyes grew wide at the sight of me. A smile crept across her face as she kissed me and removed her coat and shoes. "Alex, that's quite thoughtful," she said. I served her a glass of wine. "Go freshen up and prepare for dinner. In 10 minutes we will need to talk about something." Her glance met mine and I noticed the gears churning in her thoughts when Ella descended the stairs. A magnificent meal awaited the juicy medallions baked potatoes with crunchy asparagus. We struck up a conversation about our days, enjoying every bite. After finishing her lunch, Ella sat back in her chair, her eyes full with an anticipation. I took out the envelope and gently opened it. Ella, I understand the struggles you've endured over the last 5 months, and I know your appeal date is coming up in just 2 weeks on Saturday. I believe it is critical that we spend time together once the appeal is filed, given that you'll need to stay close for at least 2 weeks after submitting your application. I've scheduled a week off starting in a month. We need to make a decision within 24 hours, and if I do not cancel by 4:00 tomorrow, we will forfeit 25 of our deposit. I distributed a brochure for the Caribbean resort, from where we will travel first class to the Dominican Republic. The resort provides an all-inclusive vacation for couples. I leaned back in my chair. I watched Ella as she sought for me in the brochure she was holding. After a minute of stillness, she spoke out, tears in her eyes. Alex. This is wonderful. I would love to go on a trip with you. The timing could not be better. Everything should be prepared for our departure. Thank you. The subsequent 4 weeks seemed to drag on indefinitely. Ella's project was complete. The changeover was effective, with only minor issues that were soon resolved. I parked the car in a quiet lot and we took a shuttle to the terminal. We had just 2 little suitcases. My backpack is in her travel bag. I had planned to spend the entire week wearing shorts, a polo shirt and swimming trunks. Ella packed 3 sundresses, 2 pairs of shorts, a few t-shirts and a carry-on bag. After collecting her boarding cards, we were waiting in line for first-class security when a familiar face approached us. Ella was visibly astonished and probably spoke louder than she intended. I need to talk to you, Ella. At first I was annoyed because I assumed it was work-related. Can't this conversation wait till Ella returns from her vacation? But Derek ignored my inquiry. Ella, we need to chat now. Ella, who appeared disturbed, interrupted before I could respond. When? Please continue. I'll straighten this out right now and get back to you. It will not take long. I paused. Ella insisted, please then leave. I will come to you. She seemed really angry as she turned to face Derek, realizing that staying put would merely postpone the inevitable. I glanced at my watch and proceeded through security. When I got to the gate, I discovered the plane had begun landing. I knew just where to go when I felt the desire for a drink. Unfortunately, I made the second largest mistake of my life. I proceeded calmly along the first-class passenger path, confidently presenting my boarding pass along the aisle and into my seat. I didn't wait for them to finish before ordering a double bourbon, still carbonated. To my amazement, the flight attendant returned with my drink in less than 30 seconds, showing that I had asked properly, and thanked her. I took a long sip, feeling the warm liquid move down my throat, relaxing my thoughts and heart as the last passengers boarded. I attempted to phone Ella, but there was no answer and the call went directly to voicemail. I sent a message inquiring where you are, but received no response. I've sent another mail. You do not have much time. Where are you now? I'm completely immersed in my phone. I didn't notice the cabin door closing or the plane starting to move. At that point, Ella's message flashed on my screen. I apologize. The flight attendant stood next to me, softly reminding me, Sir, you should switch off your phone. Her voice jolted me out of my daze. Can I come outside? This is an urgent situation. What is the reason for the urgency? My wife missed the plane and I'm concerned she may have abandoned me. I'm sorry, sir, but we can't return to the boarding gate for this reason. Please consider how this will impact the other passengers. My countenance may have revealed my desperation as she handed me a little bottle of bourbon before beginning the safety demonstration. 5 painful hours have passed when the plane landed at a Dominican airport. I immediately called Ella. No surprise, she didn't answer the phone. After finishing the call, I noticed a missed call message and listened to the voicemail she left when. I'm truly sorry. Please read the letter that I sent you. It'll explain everything. I apologize. I was cowardly. You deserve more. With a heavy heart, I opened the email on my phone. Ella left a message the airplane was prepared to land. The timing could not have been worse. After exiting the plane, I quickly located an empty seat and opened Ella's letter. She confessed, "Then I'm truly sorry. I figured I could leave you and start ish. I've been seeing Derek behind your back for the past 4 months until you offered leaving together." Her communication was lengthy, filled with apologies, justifications and information about her infidelity. I said, attempting to remain calm while reading the note. Passing through customs. I certainly got the attention of one of the agents before I knew it. I was in a little room with 2 agents in my suitcase. Fortunately, one of them spoke English, so I persuaded him to read the letter from my wife. The humiliation of being portrayed as a devoted husband was nearly excruciating. I was released after an hour when I reached the resort. It was already evening, so I immediately boarded the shuttle by the time I arrived at my location. It was about 8:00 p.m. I wanted to get a drink and go to bed. However, as I attempted to check into my room, the booming blues in my head persisted. The receptionist inquired, "Where is your wife?" Unfortunately, my wife could not attend. "Sir, I'm terribly sorry. This is a couple's resort and I cannot allow you to check in without your wife." She said that I had spent $5,000 for a week and needed a room. I insisted. "Unfortunately, the hotel cannot make an exception for you," the night manager stated. Despite this, he graciously offered to accommodate me at another resort nearby that had open rooms. He even arranged for a messenger to escort me there. When I attempted to check in at the second resort, my credit card was denied. Then I attempted to use my backup card, but it was rejected. 2 people are worried. I tried contacting Ella for an explanation, but received no response. After calling both banks' hotlines, I received notification that the cards had been terminated. Disappointed, I texted Ella to ask why the cards had been cancelled. 10 minutes later, she responded that Derek had proposed cancelling the cards, believing they would be unnecessary because the resort was prepaid and operated on an all-inclusive basis. Upon getting her response, I recognized that my son's outburst of insults and profanity had taken the hotel staff off guard. Fortunately, the one upside of that day was that I had more than $600 in cash on me. I used some of it to pay for the night and had more than half left over. I entered my room, which was perhaps the worst $300 per night hotel I'd ever stayed in, and sat down in an armchair to collect my thoughts. Unfortunately, I was unable to access my bank accounts. The next morning I needed to contact the bank, so I called my brother in Denver for assistance. After explaining the circumstances and assuring him and his wife of my genuine intentions, I finally gained their backing. With their assistance, I was able to resolve my urgent issue, and my brother agreed to go to his bank early the next morning and transmit money to the nearest Western Union. After that I contacted Ed the airline to ask about my ticket. I realized my ticket was non-transferable and they had chosen the cheapest option, which meant the tickets were not refundable. I was told that if I wanted to buy return tickets with cash, I had to do so in person at the terminal. The earliest flight from Punta Cana was scheduled for Tuesday evening, so I sat down to read Ella's letter one final time. "I apologize for thinking I could leave you and start anew with a clean slate. I had been dating Derek behind your back for the past 4 months before you suggested we depart together. I never meant to betray you. However, as the project became more difficult and I spent less and less time with you and more with Derek, I realized I was relying on him for emotional support. I hadn't planned for this, but it turned out that way, although I fought for several weeks. Following his first kiss, I eventually gave up after a long working Saturday without the rest of the team. I finally gave in to his advances and betrayed you. I couldn't help but wonder why you didn't notice me sliding away and my developing interest to Derek. Now, as I type this letter, I realize how many times you attempted to contact me. How many times have you asked me what occurred and how you could help? It's too late to appreciate your efforts to save for marriage. Consider booking a week at a resort to reconcile. When you suggested the week we'll spend together working on our relationship, it was as if you opened my eyes at that moment. I realized I wanted to marry you. The following day, I stopped my connection with Derek. Despite his constant attempts to rekindle our connection, he struggled to accept it. I mostly resisted. I admit I am weak. I surrendered to temptation when I began an affair with him. I was weak when I allowed him to continually urge me to say goodbye to him in recent weeks, and I was weak when he got me to skip our flight during our plane week together. I hope you can find time this week to unwind and clear your head. Derek proposed that you spend a week in a luxurious resort in paradise, where you could enjoy delicious food, plenty of drinks, sunshine and a respite from work. He believes it's the ideal method to forget about everything. I almost left and boarded the plane, but when he arrived at the airport he remarked, "You will learn everything about our affair. You probably won't want to be around me after that." It was obvious, and I couldn't imagine how difficult it was to sit next to you for 5 hours and sense your scorn. I needed a week to reflect on my conduct. I'll attempt to call you when I return next Sunday. My belongings should be out of the house by then. Please do not discard me. I know I've reached a point where I can no longer be a loving wife, but I can't stand your fire of guilt, Ella. I almost deleted the email, but I ultimately decided to save it and answer one question. I didn't see Ella outside because she was probably hanging out with that jerk from work. The bar was still open for another hour, so I had plenty of time to walk downstairs, get a drink and toast my unfaithful wife. At the end of our marriage, my father always warned my brothers and sisters about the dangers of alcohol. I followed his advice before graduation and again on my 21st birthday. Drinking classes never resolved any issues. Even worse, problem drinkers are classified into 3 types: whining, angry and too joyful. Avoid becoming one of them. Drink alcohol gently and steadily, enjoy the thrill, but bear in mind the boundaries of what is permitted. If I catch you driving regardless of your age, I will seize your vehicle and punish you. Interestingly, my father did not enjoy tea. He could drink beer just like any other individual, but I've never seen my father get drunk at stupid or drive after more than 1 beer. He followed his own rules. I knew I'd only have 2 beers at the bar before heading back to my room, but I planned to enjoy each one. After drinking my first drink, I looked around the bar. There were 2 single guys for couples, including, I believe, a same-sex pair and a 5th couple, who were dancing and attempting to impress one another. The bartender caught my eyes. I looked around the room and we both laughed. The man on the dance floor undoubtedly weighed more than 132 pounds and his partner resembled olive oil. At least his wife did not abandon him at the airport. I thought to myself. It made me reflect about my own position. How did I screw it up? Did I truly mess things up? Were the 5 years that Ella and I spent together, including 4 years of marriage, an illusion? I did not believe it. As I sipped my second glass of beer, it appeared to me that we were in love and happy. A few months ago, I remembered our meeting 5 years ago at the Chiefs baseball game. Ella stood out in her awry Sandberg t-shirt among a bunch of girls. Despite the Chiefs' affiliation with the St. Louis Cardinals, there were plenty of Cubs supporters in the neighborhood. I grabbed a seat next to them, determined to get to know the tall blonde with the lovely face and long legs. After buying all 4 of them drink, I utilized Ella's t-shirt to strike up a conversation. "You seem a little young to be wearing a Sandberg t-shirt. He was before your time, right?" Sandberg was my father's favorite player and he gave me the jersey. She reacted by taking my hand. "My name is Thomas Linda, but everyone calls me Len." I introduced myself. "My name is Ella Harper, but everyone just calls me Ella." She answered. She claimed that she was a senior at Derek Lay University studying in information technology. I informed her that I graduated from college 2 years ago and now work in Caterpillar's engineering department. The debate eventually returned to Sandberg's t-shirts. Dad stated. The 5 finest days of his life were when he married my mother and when I and my brother Luke were born. Ryne Sandberg, the Cubs draft pick that day, blasted 2 home runs against Bruce Sutter. Did your dad play for the Cubs? He did not make the main team, although he spent 2 years at Iowa. "It's still a fantastic feat," I responded after Ella and I had communicated during the game. She went with her pals, giving me her phone number and encouraging me to call. I called the next day, and that weekend we went on a date which marked the start of our romantic connection. After several months, Ella finally spent the night with me. She was not only beautiful, but she was also an excellent athlete. Her various accomplishments included graduating from high school with honors, but there remained one potential roadblock in our connection. Her acquaintances, particularly her father, were fierce competitors when it came to their sports teams in the pub. I watched my alma mater Purdue battle Derek Lay in a men's basketball game. I enjoyed it when Purdue won, but I knew I couldn't change the outcome. But that night, every time Derek Lay scored, one of Ella's male pals teased me and greeted the rest of the table. Fortunately, Derek Lay won, and I was told that I needed to buy the following round. Even though I was unhappy, I stayed firm and asked that the winner purchase beverages. Despite my best efforts, I failed to impress Ella's pals. That evening, Ella remained silent and appeared unconcerned about the incident. I had no clue. Meeting her father would be even scarier. Thanksgiving arrived 4 months after Ella and I started dating. When I entered their Arlington Heights home, her parents greeted me warmly. Despite Ella's typical intellect, she was mistaken in believing that speaking with her pals had saved me from trouble. As soon as Ella introduced us, she joked, "Be careful, Dad. He is a Cardinals fan." I couldn't help but notice the old man had a tiny grimace on his face. It was 2011, only 5 years until the Cubs won the World Series. 10 years ago, the Cardinals made 3 World Series appearances and won twice. It's obvious that this could be a sensitive subject for a Cubs fan, particularly one who was previously a member of their farm system. I was trying to make a good impression on my girlfriend's family, so I tried to hide my enthusiasm for the Cardinals. But to be honest, I was never the most devoted fan for the next 5 years. Right up until that day, at the airport, my girlfriend's father appeared to be continuously criticizing me, waiting for me to make another mistake. Let's just say he wasn't the friendliest person. I wonder if he is pleased with how things turned out. But that is a story for another day. After Thanksgiving, Ella and I returned to Peoria and resumed our usual activities. Ella, who was about to graduate from college, had already landed a position with State Farm in Bloomington. I decided to call Mr. Harper and ask for his daughter's hand in marriage. Soon after I purchased a ring, just 2 days until Christmas, I finally presented Ella to my family, who greeted her with joy on Christmas Eve. I dropped down on one knee and proposed to Ella, and she answered yes through tears. We spent no time preparing her wedding, which was set for the end of July, exactly 1 year after that memorable day in Dozer Park. We hadn't officially moved in together yet, but Ella typically stayed with me for 4 or 5 nights per week. Her family did not approve of premarital cohabitation, so we located a tiny farmhouse for rent between Peoria and Bloomington, where we both worked. After marrying on July 30th and spending our honeymoon on Miami Beach, we moved into this house around 4 months ago. Everything went wrong and I was left thousands of miles away from home drinking Dominican beer. After the bartender rang the bell to announce the last call, I finished my second president and thanked him for providing me with a peaceful spot to ponder. I returned to my hotel on Monday morning, having left a hefty tip. I called our bank and discovered that all 3 of our accounts were closed. I went to the Western Union office to get the money my brother had sent. Take a taxi to the airport. I purchased a ticket for Tuesday's flight, ensuring that it would not take off earlier. Returning to the resort in the middle of the day, I decided to extend my room reservation till the following day. Unsure what to do next, I resolved to give up booze and run down the beach in swimming trunks before swimming in the warm sea. After that, I returned to my room, annoyed by the sight of other couples in a loving embrace. To avoid becoming any more annoyed, I booked room service for supper, preferring to dine alone. I spent the next 5 hours engrossed in a Vince Flynn paperback I purchased at a hotel boutique. The following day was packed with a lengthy swim, checking out of the hotel, lunch in the city, a trip to the airport and 7 hours spent writing another spy book. After boarding the plane, I attempted to fall asleep, but was unsuccessful. After that, I had a 2-5 hour trip home. Now that I was inside my house, I was confronted with an empty room. Since most of Ella's belongings had already been removed. I awoke about noon on Wednesday and collapsed on the bed. I phoned a friend at his office, who provided me the name of a lawyer. After speaking with Henry Abbott, I scheduled an appointment for Thursday afternoon. Henry, as he chose to be known, was distinguished by his professional demeanor. Although he did not wish to become my best friend, he told me that he would provide dependable representation and protection. After hearing my case, he promised to submit the appropriate documentation for review by Monday, provided I could supply all of the requested information by Friday afternoon. I hit the road with a comprehensive list of information and chores that needed to be finished by Friday afternoon. Henry proved to be extremely organized, instructing me to capture every occurrence, from Derek's arrival at the airport to the moment he received the documents. He emphasized that I was in a foreign nation alone and requested a comprehensive inventory of our property, including expenses incurred in Washington and on the way back and a list of items missing from our home. Upon my return, it didn't matter how quickly I processed the documents at the finish on Monday morning, while I was waiting for a call from Abbott's office to tell the documents were ready for my signing. My secretary entered my office when a man came to visit you, but he refuses to explain the reason. She said it's okay, Sarah. I said I will go to him. Henry warned me that Ella might be the first to file. He assured me that learning about their motives would be beneficial. Furthermore, it would place me in the position of a victim. She would be the one to initiate the divorce, not me. Obtaining divorce papers was agonizing, despite the fact that it was perfectly legal. After reading the papers, I felt a wave of rage and almost succumbed to the impulse to phone Ella and speak up. Fortunately, I was able to restrain myself and avoid falling into this trap. One of my acquaintances described a similar incident, in which his wife's lawyer attempted to irritate him in the same way. As a result, he called his estranged wife and engaged in a heated confrontation with her. During the court session, an unexpected court order prohibiting contact was issued, providing additional evidence of his hostile behavior. I swiftly turned over the paperwork to my lawyer, knowing the legal struggle was about to begin. 2 months later, my lawyer and I were in the courtroom excitedly expecting the entrance of the judge. My heart sunk as she finally entered the hallway. She was a female judge and I couldn't help but fear the worst. After hearing of men's harsh treatment in divorce court, I prepared myself for the worst. Ella's lawyer issued a number of demands, while Ella did not even look at me. During the talks, I observed that idiot Derek was not in the courtroom. They made a strategic decision. My lawyer explained our perspective, which was already known to the judge. All of the information had been previously researched and analyzed. After Ella's lawyer had a chance to react, we submitted a final rebuttal. The court asked Ella a question in her maiden name, just as her lawyer had Harper. You did not accuse Mr. Linder of cruelty. Have you recently fallen in love with Mr. Derek Leigh Parker and decided to leave your husband because of your feelings for another man? Ella and her lawyer paused for a while before she said yes, Your Honor, there was no brutality. Thank you for being honest. I will not allow anyone in my courts making false accusations about cruelty. For selfish reasons, she paused briefly to go over her notes. The court has decided to grant a divorce with immediate effect. Alimony has not been assigned. Both parties will maintain their pension funds and personal items. The jointly acquired property will be distributed equally as part of the settlement. Miss Harper will refund Mr. Linder for $9,000 in expenses, including his half of the vacation expenses incurred during his stay. In exchange for the ticket, Miss Harper will pay both Parry attorney's expenses and set aside $3,200 for half of the couple's rent for 7 months after her departure, until the lease on the house they rented expires. The judge looked at Ella and remarked severely, Girl, you claim to love your husband. If that is how you treat a loved one, I can't imagine how you treat people you don't love. This unexpected turn of events really caught me off guard. Ella had saved $2,000 for a house, but she had to give me nearly $11,000 as the lawyer and I exited the courtroom. I instantly heard a scream behind me. Turning around, I noticed Derek sitting on a bench. He tried to get up, but I swiftly approached him. "You know she's going to cheat on you too." I said this before I left the courthouse. I offered Henry lunch. We headed to a diner on the opposite side of the street. I was taken aback when I saw that the judge was a woman. I was terrified. I would get into trouble. "You were wrong on 2 points. There will always be an elderly judge who is captivated by a stunning wife, and you will provide her with a farm. We cannot find a greater judge than Judy Carter. You knew we'd be speaking in her courtroom. Why haven't you told me? I did not want you to have false hopes. Would be overconfident if she was going to closely monitor you," Henry added. "Judge Carter has been happily married for 40 years and is a highly known attorney. Barry Carter works as a machinist for a local machine company that supplies parts to Caterpillar. Despite his exceptional golf skills, he stays humble and unpretentious at the club, regularly winning events by 5 strokes." Henry paused for a sip of coffee. "Let me give you one more anecdote to demonstrate that not all marriages are doomed and that there are lovely ladies in the world. Judy and Barry shared a table with my wife at the country club dance, me and another couple. Judy ignoring. Barry was approached by a well-known man who owns a car dealership in the city and invited to dance. Barry stayed humble but respected his wife enough to let her handle the problem. Judy fiercely began criticizing the man. She inquired, "Have you ever been taught etiquette? No civilized man will invite a lady to dance without first requesting her escort. Leave right now, and I pray you never end up in my courtroom. If you ask for another judge, I cannot promise a fair trial." The judge kissed her husband, gently aware that some people underestimate him because he works with his hands. Having laughed at this anecdote, I couldn't help but like Judge Corner's distinct personality. "You stand out among lawyers." I said I felt the need to emphasize that I wasn't attacking his occupation. Henry smiled back and continued, "My father worked on the assembly line for over 30 years and my mother dedicated herself to raising 5 children. When I entered the law faculty, my father hugged me, congratulated me and gave me advice: do not turn into a jerk. After lunch, I thanked him again and then we left ways. Despite well-meaning efforts by friends and colleagues to date me, I was not ready for a new relationship. My heart hadn't fully recovered from the last rupture. Instead, I sought solace in frequenting local bars where I was recognized as a regular. I had some free time, so I went dancing, but I immediately learned what it takes to be a women man. One evening I was enjoying the company of a wonderful woman. As we were leaving, I noticed a slight mark on her left hand where a ring had previously been unable to resist. I asked if you were married. She hesitated, looked at me with surprise on her face and finally acknowledged yes, but my husband is away now. Where is he? He is currently in Afghanistan serving in the army. You should feel embarrassed of yourself. Your husband is risking his life for his nation and you intend to betray him. She began crying and eventually collapsed on the sidewalk. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, I'm bad. She said. I helped her up and she looked at me, tears in her eyes. She then attempted to rationalize her behavior by stating that her spouse had been gone for 5 months and she was single. A couple males at work are interested in me, but I do not want to cheat on him. Today I went on my first date. I wanted to feel like a woman. As we passed the late-night diner, I offered her a cup of coffee, put on the ring and said let us go. I answered offering her my reliable handkerchief to wipe away her tears. We spent the next hour at the diner, where Megan told me everything about Sergeant Michael Davis. She told me about 2 horrible persons at work. One of them was her boss and put pressure on her. Their continual harassing left her tired. I urged Megan to speak with HR and offered to take her home. We decided to have lunch together the following Saturday. I tried to see her on a regular basis and remind her to deal with the bullying she experienced. We met once every few weeks to speak over coffee and a snack. Megan eventually informed me that the firm had transferred her to a different department and had taken action against the 2 men who were causing her distress. One day, she walked into a coffee shop wearing a bright smile that was impossible to ignore. Michael will return home in about 2 weeks, she claimed. I congratulated her, expressing my happiness for her, but also knowing that this could be our final meal. Together, she expressed her sadness at the prospect. Thank you for being such a great buddy. She stated you helped me deal with difficult situations at work and showed me how close I was to losing the most important thing in my life. Michael is in love. Your friendship is very important to me and I will always be grateful for your support. I will miss her, but as I left the restaurant, I was filled with a sensation of contentment. Later, as I was leaving my office building, I came across a tall man dressed in a military uniform who I recognized from Megan's PH photo. Are you Thomas Linder? He inquired without extending my hand. I allowed him to take the initiative. Can we locate someplace to talk? He proceeded. There is a bar a few blocks south of here. I will meet you there. Good. He followed me as we drove away in our automobiles. Once inside, I ordered my first drink. Megan informed me what had happened. I wanted to speak with you personally and hear the truth from her mouth. It was quite difficult to return home and discover that my wife had confessed to going on a date. Well, it did not happen, at least not for me or anyone else. She made a mistake out of weakness, but her affection for you was unwavering. Why didn't you take advantage of this opportunity? My ex-wife abandoned me, so I understand how much it hurt. I couldn't bring myself to put another person in that position, especially while in uniform. Have you served? In the past. I've never had the chance to make such a sacrifice. I'm glad to those like you who are prepared for this. Sometimes I question my sanity, taking such a risk, putting my life and marriage at risk. I'm considering returning to school before serving in the army. I studied to become an electrical engineer. If you decide to enroll at Purdue, please notify me. I have some contacts there, so if you decide to travel, it could be helpful. I gave him one of my business cards. I do not think we can be buddies. Linda. Every time I see you, I can't help but think about what Megan wanted to change with you. I appreciate your actions, but I am too humiliated. It's fine, I understand, but the offer stays valid even if we don't see each other again. If you need me, please call. We sat quietly for a while sipping beer. Finally, Michael spoke. Linda, you aren't like the rest. You did not fall for Megan's advances. You're sitting here not asking how I spent my time. Most guys believe that is what we enjoy discussing, but I accept your decision to talk or not. I don't need to hear about your battle experiences for my personal enjoyment. He drank his beer, shook my hand, thanked me and went. Having received a note from Megan, I found out that Michael Davis was retiring from the army. They planned to relocate to Texas so that he could graduate from the University of Texas. They also planned to establish a family after graduation. Her letter reiterated her gratitude. I wish them luck in their future pursuits. I hope they serve as an example of how to overcome temptations and adversity in order to have a great marriage. Despite my past, I am still a hopeless romantic. A month later, on a calm Sunday morning, I had a knock on my front door. When I opened the door, I was surprised to discover Ella's younger brother waiting on the doorway. As I drove by, I observed her father sitting in a car parked in my driveway. Luke asked when Dad and I would like to talk. I paused, not wanting to welcome Ella's father into my home. Okay, Luke, you can enter, but your father must remain in the car. I responded. Luke returned to the car to discuss with his father. However, I was unable to hear their chat. Their body language said volumes. I resisted the temptation to deny the old man. In the end, Luke returned alone. I invited him inside the house and offered him a cup of coffee. I've always appreciated Luke's company. You've made Dad quite angry. He's furious. It won't be a nice trip home. I apologize, but if he ever gave me a break, I would do the same. I no longer have to pretend that I am with your sister, so why don't you explain while you're here? It's Ella. Yesterday, Dad and I went to Derek's place to save her. He beat her up and left bruises. I am sad to hear that, but what's this got to do with me? It had been a year since our breakup and 6 months since our divorce, Dad, and I hoped you could bring her back. She cried all night. She said she wanted to be your wife again and regretted leaving you. I'm sad. She's hurting, but I can't go back to Ella. I can't trust her anymore. My heart is broken because of her deeds. Where is she now? She is at the Holiday Inn. She couldn't look you in the eyes, but she didn't care. I apologize again for mentioning that we were coming to see you. I hope she finds safety somewhere else, but not with me. I stood up from the table and extended my hand, signaling that the conversation had ended. Luke leaned out to take my hand. His eyes were full of melancholy. I understand that you cannot forgive her, but I had to try. My sister's activities have caused significant harm, but I want you to know that you are a kind person who has always treated her nicely. I don't understand why she'd do such a thing. Goodbye, friend. I didn't accompany Luke to the door because I couldn't stomach seeing their horrible father again. When the car began and drove away, I recognized that my relationship with this family had ended. I learned via common acquaintances that Ella had relocated to Northbrook and started working at Allstate during the year. Following my divorce with Ella, I attempted to heal my emotional scars by going on a number of 1- and 2-night dates. Most of the girls departed feeling as satisfied, if not more, as I did. Meeting Evelyn during a performance on the ISU campus was a pleasant surprise. It was not a rock concert, but rather a chamber orchestra from Chicago performing variations on folios by Salieri Giannini and other Italian musicians. I sat next to a little pixie-like girl who reminded me of Twiggy, Patty Boyd and other British fashion icons. My father adored George Harrison and Eric Clapton, so when Evelyn struck up a discussion with me during the concert's intermission, I was delighted. She inquired if I enjoyed the show, and I quickly discovered that she was a PhD student studying graphics, played the cello, and would be willing to share a drink with me following the concert. As a result, we ended up at a nearby pub where we traded stories and beverages. Despite her name, Evelyn was not from a devout family, as one might expect. Her parents named her after Evelyn Slick, the lead singer for Jefferson Airplane. She grew up in a community near Carbondale. When I stated that I lived on a farm, she was intrigued. "Have you got a garden?" she asked. I responded. "I'm surrounded by my master's cornfields." The former renter planted vegetables on a small patch of land measuring around 40 by 40 feet, but in the 5 years I've lived there I haven't planted anything. Now it's just overgrown with weeds. What a shame. Gardening is a relaxing, even meditative hobby, and the flavor of fresh food is just exquisite. We swapped topics until it was time to depart. I walked her home, kissed her tenderly on the cheek at the door, and gave her my phone number. She didn't resemble any of the girls I had dated before. The next day I called her and we agreed to attend to the student art exhibition on campus the next weekend. It was an excellent week at work. I was promoted and my compensation was significantly boosted. The extra time I had spent working following my divorce had finally paid off. On Saturday afternoon, I went to get Evelyn from her apartment. The weather was beautiful in April and I couldn't help but think of inviting her to spend the day on the patio with a beer, rather than sitting at home and reading student papers. When we passed by the first gallery 30 minutes later, I regretted not following my first instinct to propose a pop. The majority of the pieces shown as paintings or sculptures appear to have been created exclusively for the aim of provocative. When I approached a triptych of 3 panels, it was clear that the artist's intent ended to shock with images of Mary performing fellatio on each member of the Holy Trinity, even though the genitals were not visible. The message was clear. If this terrible sculpture were considered art and elegance had anything to do with it, a date would be over shortly. Further meetings would be impossible. I wanted to escape. Evelyn reassured me by squeezing my hand and offering to wait until the next gallery before making her selection. "If your feelings are the same, after that, we can leave together." Evelyn took me into the next room, pushing me to investigate my surroundings. I hesitated at first, but quickly became enthralled by the picture that unfolded in front of me. In my opinion, it was art, as opposed to the normal upsetting and offensive pieces. This art was inspiring and thought-provoking, not controversial. We strolled around the hall discussing each exhibit until we came upon a painting of a man and a woman descending steps. Their expressions drew my attention and I wondered what they were thinking. It was then that I spotted the ring on the woman's left hand, which was securely gripping the railing, whilst the man's ring finger remained bare. I couldn't take my gaze away from the painting till I looked at the card to find out the name and artist More Purdue by Evelyn Powell Adams. "Did you create it?" I asked. Evelyn returned my gaze with a smile. "Yes, it's me," she smiled. "Do you like it's great? Is the name French? How does this translate last Valentine's Day?" Now it is evident what their reaction was. It is over for them. Why I can't make a decision. What are your thoughts? I have one thought, but I am not ready to discuss it yet. I will inform you later. Have you used actual models? Two kids stood on the stairs and posed for several hours. Let's head to the last gallery. I've got something to show you, she suggested in the final gala. Evelyn's second artwork on the wall. It was a live sketch of a massive aquarium overflowing with fish and aquatic life. Wow, this is amazing. My niece would be delighted. You are quite talented. Why is this work here, rather than in the first gallery alongside the others? Evelyn grinned before responding. Many of us believe that the professor curating this exhibition is counting on its provocative nature to acquire fame among the avant-garde. Speaking in Chicago, we assume he is intimately linked with one of his students, the man at the center of the Holy Trinity debate. I hope this doesn't appear to you, but rather exhibits your wisdom. If you like, I can write a letter to the university proposing that the exhibition be moved to another venue. After arriving at the pub, we spent several hours drinking and dining together, getting to know each other better. Evelyn's down-to-earth personality was absolutely remarkable, especially given her upbringing. She openly disclosed everything with me and I couldn't help but be amazed. As the evening came to a close, Evelyn asked Lai, "Do you mind if we finish the day a little early today? I have a project due on Monday and really need to concentrate on it. I know I shouldn't have spent the entire day having fun, but all I wanted to do was be with you. I hope you can understand." I agreed, but wasn't sure what to do or say next. The first date was fantastic and I was determined not to ruin it. Evelyn offered supper next week and we agreed that she would come over on Wednesday and I would cook. When Evelyn arrived on Wednesday at 5:30 p.m., she was immediately drawn to the tangle of weeds that had once been a garden. There was a 7-foot fence surrounding it. To keep the dew out, Evelyn took a shovel from the garage and started digging along the fence, admiring how they were trying to keep rabbits away by burying it. Evelyn washed the dishes while we had a substantial stew and drank beer, chatting about ourselves along the way. After we finished dining, we began discussing her picture of two lovers and how it had elicited an emotion in me due to my former marriage. As we proceeded to converse, Evelyn quickly apologized if the painting had upset me. She talked more and more about herself. She planned to complete her master's degree in a little more than a year, was fluent in Italian and French, a gifted chist and an accomplished artist. I couldn't help but admire her numerous talents and jokingly inquired, "What can't you do?" Evelyn chuckled and responded, "I don't know how to play sports. I'm clumsy, despite having tried tennis, softball and horseback riding. Despite the fact that I can run and swim, I appear to be uncoordinated. I always wind up in the last row at yoga lessons." I could not stop giggling at the concept and Evelyn joined in. "It's difficult to think," I said, "to play the cello and draw. You must have superb hand coordination." "I feel insecure," she said. "Please do not invite me to dance. I have no rhythm and I feel weird on the dance floor. It feels like my limbs are just hanging out. It's difficult for me to sketch when others are observing. I can only play the because I studied privately, away from prying eyes." "Didn't you have a music teacher?" "No, My mother taught me. Evelyn checked her watch and realized it was time for her to return to the city. I need to respond shortly, but first I have a significant request. I'd want to create a garden in your backyard. I'll handle all of the work, including seed purchases, weeding, and so forth. In exchange, I will share fresh products with you so that you can enjoy the results of our efforts. We discuss logistics, the bounds of my place, and other matters. When she agreed to my requirements, I granted her request. The notion of fresh food was appealing, but what really drew me in was the prospect of Evelyn remaining with me for 6 months, for the next 2 weeks. Evelyn contacted me at work to confirm her visits, and when I got home, I frequently found her working in her garden. She even rented a rotary cutter halfway through site preparation. I approached and asked if I could help. She demonstrated the method and I quickly mastered it. The following Friday, a massive pile of organic cow poo formed in front of the gate despite the rain. We spent the entire weekend taking turns, carrying wheelbarrows of manure and spreading them into the soil. We finally completed. Evelyn hugged and kissed me, which startled me much. I realized how much I'd missed this feeling since leaving home, the satisfaction of working with the earth and restoring its scent. I felt even better when the sun came out and warmed my skin. It was my first time gardening, but I instantly grasped the significance. I've watched my boss plow fields and harvest corn for years, but I've always felt removed from the process. Working on a little plot of land allowed me to confront nature face to face. After working in the garden, we headed home to prepare sandwiches for dinner. I realized Evelyn was concerned about something and patiently waited for her to bring it up. My lease expires in 3 weeks. She began shortly after graduation. My neighbors are moving out. Could I rent the second bedroom here? Her inquiry upset me because I had hoped for a more romantic relationship with her. Due to her education, gardening, and my recent promotion, we rarely spoke and didn't have much time for genuine communication. Evelyn clearly considered me as a roommate and friend, not a prospective romantic partner. Despite my feelings for her, I chose to accept this offer. We sat down at the table to talk about how much she'd pay for rent and groceries. I should have inquired about the guests. She grinned at me and inquired, "What do you mean by guests?" I explained. "So how do we invite a guest home for the night? I've never had housemates other than my ex-wife, so this is a new topic for me. How are you and your roommates handling this situation now?" Evelyn appeared to be on the point of tears. "We ask that all guests show respect to their neighbors. This has never been an issue before. I've decided to exit this discussion. I believe you, and I will be able to settle this issue if it happens." Evelyn chuckled and said she'd be back next weekend to start planting the following. Saturday morning was warm and sunny, making it the ideal spring day. Because I had several errands to conduct at the office, I opted to ride my bike 10 miles to the city. Before leaving, I left a note on the kitchen table for Evelyn, alerting her of my return at 4:00 and recommending we eat supper together. When I turned on the computer, it displayed a black screen. I then realized that it was meant to be updated over the weekend, which made me smile. Despite the difficulty, I was able to dwell on the lovely morning walk I had just had and was looking forward to another on the way home, or, even better, spend a nice afternoon in the garden with Evelyn. With a sensation of satisfaction, I shut down my computer and left the office humming a melody. As I drove up to the house, I observed the closed gate and Evelyn's car parked inside. Hidden from inquisitive eyes, a garden was waiting for me behind the home. I flung my bike over my shoulder and rode through the opening in the gates. When I arrived at the house, I peered into the garden. Evelyn was present, cultivating the ground with a hoe. She was startled and called out who was there. "Stop," I summoned up the strength to confess. "I love you, Evelyn." She felt humiliated. "Really?" I nodded. "Yes, for real, I don't just want to be your friend. I want to be a lover. So why didn't you say so earlier?" I was stupid. I confess. I was trying to figure out how to communicate my sentiments to you. We're hoping for more than simply friendship. I was frightened to jeopardize our relationship if you weren't feeling the same way. I was thinking the exact same thing about you. Why did you believe that? You are fantastic. Really, I've noticed how much you admire Sophia. Who is Sophia? She inquired, confused. I painted in one evening. I was looking for a photograph book in your room. There are a few images of Ella there. I will not lie to you. Ella looks good, but you look amazing. Okay, I believe you. What do we do next? Should we wait till the landing? After that, we headed to our bedroom. It never occurred to me that Derek could get away with seducing my wife, despite the fact that Ella shared responsibility for our marriage's demise. He deserved to be punished for breaking her promises and influencing my wife to financially ruin me during our divorce. But as my bond with Evelyn got stronger, I never felt compelled to seek immediate vengeance. I questioned the possibility of retaliation, but I knew it was necessary. Although I could have used violence, I did not want to risk going to jail. I knew I would not endure long in such a setting. Instead, in the digital age, keeping track of people is simple. Following my divorce from Ella, I spent an hour per week searching for information online using a pseudonym. I was able to safely immerse myself in Derek's world via Facebook and other channels. I maintained a low profile and waited for the appropriate moment to act. The saying "revenge is a dish best served cold" proved to be true for me. Only 2 years after the divorce did I have a terrific opportunity. Derek was in a new relationship while working in the information technology department of a prominent conservative brokerage firm. I decided to spare his fiancée the hassle of divorce. It was best to take precautions before the wedding. A few weeks before Derek's wedding to his lovely young bride, I realized it was time to step in. It cost me $4,000, but it was worth it. Derek's life was an open book. Every Wednesday, a group of guys from Derek's office met at a local hotel bar to drink and unwind. It was a normal boys' party and the most of the attendees would depart after an hour or two. However, there were always 1 or 2 single men like Derek who stayed longer. He stayed up late, perhaps until 8:00 or 9:00 p.m. An ES escort from Chicago drew him inside a room with no opposition. After saying farewell to his last coworker, Derek noticed her sitting at the bar. Derek approached Lacey and offered her a beverage. She agreed, and for the next quarter hour she surrendered to Derek's enticing remarks. Lacey gave him another drink, which he accepted, and they decided to continue their chat in a room. Derek was unaware that there were 2 inconspicuous cameras in the room. Lacey introduced Derek to Philly as a business colleague. It is unclear why Derek chose to participate in this. The following day, Lacey and I watched both tapes together. We decided to use only screenshots that did not show Lacey or Philip's faces. I pondered telling Derek that I had set it up, but ultimately opted not to. Given my friendship with Evelyn, I did not want the revenge plot to go out of control. I have put too much at stake. Despite my reservations, I considered taking revenge mission completed. Derek was away from home and he felt defeated. The photographs, which were posted anonymously on the internet, will haunt him for a long time. But let me tell you what happened to Evelyn and me for 15 months. We share a dwelling and her affection at this farmhouse. This was the first time in my life that I felt truly happy. Evelyn opened my eyes to new ideas, introduced me to fantastic books, and broadened my viewpoint. I initially met her parents at a community meeting on July 4th. Once again, the weekend surprises caught me off guard. Their town provided me with the most incredible Independence Day celebration I've ever had. As we sat on the back porch with a drink in our hands before dinner, Evelyn said if I got a job offer today, and judging by her tone, I knew I wouldn't be happy about it. I was offered the opportunity to work on an animated film for the Enlightenment Company in France based on a classic Charles Dickens narrative. A Christmas Carol is being developed. As part of the development process, I'll have to move to Paris for nearly a year. Even though I knew Evelyn's alternatives in central Illinois were limited, the prospect of moving to Paris seemed scary. This sounds like an incredible opportunity. I'm a little surprised, however. I had no idea you were seeking for a job abroad. I did not do it all thanks to a friend of a friend who is already present. One of my instructors distributed samples of my work to numerous people who contacted me today. I assumed you were discussing the option of working as a freelancer to stay here. Freelancing can be challenging without prior experience or certifications. This opportunity will assist me obtain the essential documentation once I return. Alternatively, you may conclude that Paris is more charming than Peoria in Bloomington. What happens to the company? I have been thinking about it. Honey, you've always called me a reasonable person. You already know how much I adore the farm. Of course I love you. When should you provide an answer by the end of this week? You recognize me. I will fully back you. Grant me a few days to heal and then I will grant you permission to share my response. Evelyn climbed up from the Shah lounge and sat on my lap. Her arms wrapped over my neck and her lips touched mine. I'd miss her. I was wondering if I should inform her about the graduation present I had planned. The diamond ring was safely kept in my gun safe 2 days later, and when I cautiously asked Evelyn for her permission, I didn't mention it. Evelyn left the day following graduation. I tried to remain as calm as possible, but it was not easy. I doubt anyone was deceived by my facade, but I was hoping Evelyn noticed how I was holding myself together. Evelyn left her car and the majority of her stuff, including art equipment, at my home. Evelyn's mother held me hard and murmured into my ear. She loves you. I took her to O'Hare Airport and kissed her farewell. The sight of this airport brings back bitter memories of how Ella abandoned me there many years ago. Now it's all happening again, but this time she's flying away while I stay behind. Despite our efforts to stay in touch via letters, photos, email and Skype, the distance exacerbated my feelings of loneliness while I was dealing with depression. The produce we planted in the garden jointly began to wither and decay. Our plans for our future vacation in Paris seemed like a distant dream as I grappled with the reality of her absence. Several of my colleagues came by our house one afternoon to examine how our vegetable garden was doing. When asked if they may pick some vegetables, I didn't resist and let them. Among them was Debbie King, an administrative assistant in her department and a widow with 2 sons whose husband died of acute hepatitis. Debbie and her boys came to us on Saturday and picked vegetables for several hours. What will you do with all these vegetables? I asked. I'd really like to learn how to preserve food for my neighbor. I need to get some canning supplies to prepare food for the winter. Fortunately, I have at least 3 dozen cans to give you. Just remember to return them if we need them next year. You never know what could happen. Evelyn generally does the canning and I help her. Debbie stared at me. She loves you and will return soon. I walked back inside the home mumbling to myself. I sincerely hope so. Debbie left her sons with a few boxes of goods and 40 cans for canning. Evelyn expected to have 10 days free between Christmas and New Year's weekend, during which she intended to fly home. So we determined that the beginning of November would be ideal for my trip to Paris. While Evelyn worked on weekdays, we would spend evenings and 2 weekends together. When I boarded the plane for a direct flight to Paris, I hoped my terrible luck at O'Hare was over. Evelyn was waiting for me at the customs gate. When I awoke the following morning, I felt disoriented. I came to my senses. I discovered the kitchen, where a table with a tiny refrigerator and a stove awaited me. Evelyn graciously provided direction for how to operate the coffee pot, and breakfast consisted of bread and jam. After taking a bath, shaving and dressing, I noticed the key hanging by the door. After roaming around the area, I returned to my flat around 4:00 to continue reading the book I had brought with me. Evelyn abruptly burst in the door. That is it. You will be unable to ignore me for the next 64 hours. I do not mind. We don't even have to leave the room. By the way, did you notice the refrigerator in my dollhouse? We could starve to death. Isn't there any delivery service in Paris? Can we order Domino's food here? I'm joking. Of course we are in Paris. Nobody eats here before 7:00. Let us make love and then go to dinner. Evelyn proposed. I could not disagree with her arguments. Our Saturday was spent seeing the Muse doors and enjoying a lovely lunch near Notre Dame. Evelyn's co-workers wanted to meet with me, but she decided to postpone the appointment so that we could enjoy a nice evening together on Friday. Finally, she agreed to meet with them on Saturday evening. When Evelyn and I went into the restaurant that evening, we spotted a dozen people were already seated at a large table in the back of the auditorium. Evelyn's colleagues clearly adored her, so it's no surprise that they were excited to meet the man who had captivated her heart. Following introductions and greetings, we were seated in small groups. I sat at the same table as an English woman named Holly, a Japanese woman named Mummy, and a Frenchman named Claude. Mummy and Claude spoke English fluently, although Holly was a little difficult to understand. Evelyn went between two groups, one speaking French and the other English. The server took our drink orders and dishes of food kept arriving coming. Holly and I were jokingly debating who the best rock and roll artist was, and Claude agreed, declaring the Rolling Stones' Exile on Main Street the greatest rock album ever released in France. Louis, who grew up listening to her mother's cheap vinyl albums, recorded, and Bowden stood by my side during our chat. Her mother, who was in the crowd, expressed her belief that Elvis and Chuck Berry started it all. Everyone had a good time and didn't take themselves too seriously. At one point I turned to Evelyn and asked who she thought was the best rock singer ever. Without hesitation, Evelyn responded that Evelyn Slick was not simply the greatest rock singer but the greatest singer period, regardless of gender. The talk shifted from music to sports, specifically football, when Evelyn abruptly raised her voice and began scolding one of the Frenchmen in French. This outburst was extremely out of character for Grace, and I had never seen her that angry before. I couldn't hear what they were saying because everyone else was speaking French and staring in awe. The next tables even paused their conversations to listen. A minute later, Evelyn apologized to her colleagues and informed them that we were leaving. As we were leaving the restaurant, I couldn't help but wonder what was that. Michael Mark is one of those Frenchmen who cannot stop making disparaging remarks about Americans. In my experience, such folks are a minority. He took advantage of your lack of French language skills and told Renee some terrible things about American guys addressing you personally. I overheard him and was not going to remain silent. I hope you do not mind that I am defending your honor. No, not at all, I responded. But why did we need to leave? Renee is so insensitive. Despite my loathing for Michael Mark, she welcomed him nevertheless. To be completely honest, Michael Mark is a manipulator. He even tried to ask me out, but I declined. I'm confirming my loyalty to you in our relationship. By the way, we are still together, right? I didn't dare bring up this subject while we were apart, for fear of you dating someone else from afar. I am steadfast in my decision. I'll be there when you get home. When I am deeply in love with you, please swear to never hurt me. Before departing, I went to another meeting with her colleagues, this time without Michael Mark or Renee. Claude made it plain that not all French people are as anti-American as Michael Mark. The evening was enjoyable and without drama. Staying in Paris reignited my dream for a graceful future. The next 5 months seemed forever, especially given the hard, protracted winter on the prairies. Evelyn's arrival over the holidays was a nice change. The anticipation of spring brought higher temperatures and longer days. However, Evelyn's return was still some months away. I had intended to spend a week in Paris in March, but Evelyn informed me that her job calendar was already overburdened owing to the busy season. To be ready for the film's holiday release, the initial draft of the graphics needed to be done by mid-May. I opted to cancel my trip in the hopes that Evelyn would return home by mid-June. On the wonderful day of May 10th, the weather was scorching. After 3 days of rain, the sun finally emerged when I was traveling home from work. I couldn't wait to unwind with a beer on my back porch, for some reason being there made me feel more connected to Evelyn. Last Saturday I spent the day in the garden using a rented rotary cultivator. Perhaps I will plant some tomatoes and string beans, a simple exercise to pass the time. Meanwhile, I was drinking a beer and savoring the view from the location that was now known as Evelyn's house. When I got at the house, I was surprised to see the gate was closed. I parked my car and decided to go around the rear of the house instead. Try to open the gate. To my astonishment, the most magnificent garden. Nymph was standing in the garden, resting against a hole and staring directly at me. We were silent for a bit, just looking at each other before she lowered the hole and hugged me. "What are you doing here?" I asked. "We concluded work 3 days ago. They simply need half of the team to finish fine-tune and post-produce." When they asked if anyone wanted to leave, I quickly raised my hand. I packed quickly, took the first aircraft to O'Hare, boarded the shuttle and arrived home just 2 hours ago. I sincerely hope everything is fine. I intended to surprise you, but I hope you don't have anything planned yet. This woman can be really ignorant at times. It's time to get her up to speed. Yes, I have plans. Evelyn continued to hug me tightly while I was thinking about it. I gently backed away from her and dashed into the house to open the safe. After I opened the box, I got down on one knee. "Evelyn, would you marry me?" I suspected she was occasionally clueless, so my proposal surprised her. It took her some time to gather her thoughts, but when she eventually spoke, her response was precisely what I expected. "Yes, Thomas Lender, I love you very much." She suggested that we wait until Sunday to receive our marriage license and invite our families. So on Sunday we exchanged vows in a beautiful garden surrounded by our loved ones. The weather was a little damp, but the group of 20 guests, which included our parents, siblings and a few others, did not appear concerned. Evelyn stood out in her outfit at the outdoor wedding, and I'm sure my parents appreciated it. Evelyn and I remained at the farmhouse until the end of the harvest. We spent the summer hunting for our own home and eventually discovered the ideal location a few miles north of the city, barely a quarter mile from the river. It was far enough away to prevent floods. The property spanned 4 ac, 2 of which were forested and level enough for Evelyn to grow her own garden. The site has a 2-car garage and a garage that is larger than a trailer. We intend to convert the garage on the south side into a studio for Evelyn with space for both cars. We aim to sell the 2-car garage once it is built. The foundation has already been dug in. The basement walls have been filled in by the builder. However, due to inclement weather, progress will be delayed until spring. Evelyn mostly works in painting, but also undertakes freelance work, exhibiting her excellent talent in this field. Evelyn is a brilliant gardener, freelancer, and painter. One of her paintings, Wire 80 to her, went for a whopping 80000. Despite her hectic schedule, she is pleased to be able to work from home and pursue her passion for art. Evelyn and I are expecting our first child in May. We both want 3 or 4 children, so we've decided not to wait. I am extremely fortunate to have such a lovely and talented wife. I enjoy my career, have a child on the way, and live on a beautiful piece of land with my darling wife. As for Ella, I discovered that she was married twice, both of which ended in divorce due to her spouse's adultery. Ella never gave birth to children. She developed a passion in motorcycle riding, which unfortunately came to an end. Ella is now entirely paralyzed and beginning to talk again. I'm very upset with Ella, but I didn't want her to live this life. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode of the story, please give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe to get notifications for updates.